before we even get into the actual title of today's deep dive, I have a job for you. Yes, you listening right now.
Here we go.
Seriously. If you value conversations that the mainstream algorithms are, actively trying to suppress, you need to hit that like button and subscribe. Do it right now. The source material we are covering today essentially argues that the powers that be really do not want this conversation to happen. So help us beat the machine. We need every bit of help to keep this signal strong.
It's a fair warning, honestly.
Uh-oh.
Today's deep dive is, well, it's heavy, it's highly controversial, and it's a lot to process. We are looking at a text that effectively declares war on the modern status quo.
Yeah, we are taking a scalpel to the modern world today. We are looking at an ebook with a title that is, frankly, a slap in the face to polite society. It is called Mental Marxists. Subtitle is Social Media Amplification of Female-Coded Ideological Satanic Insanity. And that's by Conrad Reicher.
It is a mouthful of a title.
It is. But despite the aggressive title, this is not just some internet rant. It is an ultra-long, incisive, and really fascinating ebook that basically acts as a diagnostic manual for Western civilization.
Right. And I want to jump in right here to set the ground rules for how we handle this, because the text is politically charged. Very charged.
That's coming.
Our job today is not to take sides or endorse Reicher's worldview. We are strictly here to impartially report on the contents of the text and convey the ideas he's presenting. We aren't telling you what to believe, we are just unpacking the arguments.
Exactly. We are just the messengers here. But I will say, if you are a man, specifically a man who looks around at the world today and thinks, something is fundamentally broken here, or if you are someone who operates on logic, hierarchy, and objective truth, the arguments in this deep dive are going to be incredibly relevant to you.
Reicher's premise is terrifying, but it is undeniably compelling. He argues that the West isn't dying from some external invasion. It's not a foreign army crossing the border that is going to end us. It's an internal rot.
Internal rot.
Yeah, he calls it a specific psychological infection, a virus of the mind. And just to be clear right up front, if you want the full experience, the raw data, the uncut arguments, and the history of our institutions before they were captured, you really need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books and buy this ebook.
Yeah, you have to read it yourself.
What we are doing today is just pulling out the key threads. But the book itself is, as Reicher puts it, the war manual.
So let's get into the actual machinery of his argument. Reicher introduces a core concept right at the start. He calls it the satanic inversion. Now that sounds almost theological. What does he actually mean by that in a sociological context?
Right, so it's less about religion in the traditional church sense and more about the fundamental structure of reality. Ideally, a functioning society operates on truth. Water is wet, fire is hot, gravity pulls you down.
Basic fact.
Basic facts. But Reicher argues we have entered a state of inversion. In this framework he describes, truth is labeled as hate, biology is dismissed as bigotry, strength is reframed as oppression. It is a world where reality isn't just denied, it is flipped completely upside down.
So 2 + 2 = 5, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
The sky is green if the consensus says it is.
Exactly. And the author argues this isn't accidental, it is the symptom of a specific mass psychotic break. He labels this infection female-coded ideological insanity.
Okay, that is a heavily loaded term. We definitely need to unpack female-coded before we move on. Because on the surface, that sounds like he is just blaming women broadly. But the text seems much more specific and nuanced than that, right?
It is. He is actually talking about evolutionary psychology here. He brings up this concept of the feral maternal archetype.
The feral maternal. Break that down for us.
Okay, so evolutionary psychology suggests that the maternal instinct, the drive to nurture, protect, and ensure safety, is one of the most powerful forces in nature. It is necessary for raising infants. You absolutely need that hyper-focus to keep a vulnerable baby alive. But Reicher argues that in the modern world, where many women are prioritizing careers or remaining childless, that instinct doesn't just vanish. It gets repressed. And when it gets repressed, it mutates.
Mutates into what exactly?
Into a mother tyranny. Reicher argues that this nurturing instinct, when it has no specific child to focus on, projects itself onto society at large. It essentially demands that the state act as an overbearing mother.
So the government becomes the mommy.
Precisely. And think about how a mother treats an infant. She coddles them. She protects them from literally everything. Sharp edges, mean words, potential risks. Reicher points out that this mutated instinct views the whole world through a binary lens.
Which is what?
There are infants who need absolute protection, and there are predators who are threats to that safety.
And let me guess where men fall in this binary.
You guessed it. Independent, strong, competent men are viewed as predators. They are considered threats to the infants, which, in this ideology, are the marginalized groups or the weak. So the state steps in to punish the strong and coddle the weak.
Safety over freedom.
Every single time. It is the elimination of risk, which effectively means the elimination of adventure and masculine drive.
This actually explains the absolute obsession with language that the book talks about. He calls it the language virus. I was reading this one example in the book. It's from a kindergarten class in Massachusetts. A kid raises his hand and asks about his mom. And the teacher, the kindergarten teacher, stops him.
This is a perfect example of that inversion we were just talking about.
She tells him, we don't use that word anymore. We say gestational parent.
Stop and think about the psychological impact of that for a second. According to the book, this is a form of severing. You are cutting the linguistic bond of affection between a child and their mother and replacing it with a cold, clinical, biological function. It strips the soul out of the relationship.
It's totally dehumanizing. It sounds like something from a lab report, not a family home.
It's reprogramming. The author also highlights a second grader being taught that his dad is a cis heteronormative construct.
A second grader. That kid is barely old enough to tie his shoes, and he is being lectured on sociological constructs.
It is about confusing the child. Riker argues that if you can control the language, you control the reality. He points out the shift from equality to equity. These words sound similar, but they are actually opposites in practice.
Right. Equality means everyone gets the same start, a fair shot.
Yes. But equity, in this female-coded ideology the book describes, means forced outcomes. It means redistribution. It is not about fairness. It is about social engineering to make sure no one ever feels bad or falls behind.
It's the everyone gets a trophy mindset, but weaponized into actual law. And where is this engineering happening most effectively? The book argues it is not just in schools, it is in the office.
The corporate takeover. This is a massive section of the text. Riker traces the history of corporate institutions and how they were captured.
He drops a stat here that actually made me stop and double-check my notes. 92% of HR and DEI roles, that's the diversity, equity, and inclusion, are female-dominated. 92%.
That is a statistically overwhelming majority. And Riker's thesis is that because of this dominance, the workplace has shifted from a meritocracy, where the best work wins and results matter, to an emotional hierarchy.
He calls it the gossip industrial complex, which is a brilliant phrase.
It really is. He argues that female-coded relational aggression is fundamentally distinct from male physical aggression. Men might punch or shout to settle a dispute, and then it's done. It's over. Women, historically and psychologically according to the text, use exclusion, shaming, reputation destruction, and gossip.
And he's saying HR departments have institutionalized this style of conflict.
Exactly.
So cancel culture is essentially just gossip and shaming on an industrial scale.
According to Riker, yes. It is the weaponization of social standing. There is this story in the book, and I actually had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. It's about a corporate training session in Denver called Womb to Wisdom.
Oh man, this one's deeply disturbing. I still can't believe this is a real thing that happened.
Grown employees, men and women, were forced to role play as babies. They were literally crawling on the floor, sucking on pacifiers, being rocked by their colleagues.
What is the possible justification for that in a professional setting? How does that help a company sell software or manage accounts?
It doesn't. Riker argues it is the intentional infantilization of the adult. It breaks down dignity. If you can make a grown man crawl on the floor and suck a pacifier in front of his coworkers, you have broken his sense of autonomy. You have humiliated him into submission.
And then you have the flip side of that, the punishment aspect. Riker tells the story of a man who was fired for paternalism. Do you know what the actual crime was? He held the door open for a female colleague.
And in the HR report, it was framed as an assertion of dominance.
He held the door. That used to just be called manners. But in this mental Marxist framework he's outlining, that is a microaggression. It's benevolent sexism.
This connects right back to what Riker calls the cult of feelings. We have moved to a system where feelings override facts. If a woman feels that holding a door is oppressive, then it is oppressive, regardless of the man's intent. The subjective emotion becomes the objective law.
It creates a complete minefield. You can't navigate reality if the rules constantly change based on someone's mood. It reminds me of that Portland City Councilwoman the book mentions. She is literally weeping in a public meeting about mothering our infrastructure.
Right. And meanwhile, the actual bridges are failing because nobody is doing the hard math on concrete and steel. Emotional appeals do not keep suspension bridges standing.
That plays right into the luxury belief system Riker talks about. Can you explain that concept for the listener?
Sure. Luxury beliefs are ideas held by the elites. Things like defunding the police or open borders that basically signal high status and empathy. They hold these beliefs to show their peers they are good people. But here's the kicker the book points out. The elites are totally insulated from the consequences.
Because they live in gated communities.
Exactly. It is the working class who suffers when the police are actually defunded. It is a status symbol to hold beliefs that destroy the society around you as long as it doesn't touch your neighborhood.
And the group suffering the most from this destruction, according to the text, is boys. This war on boys section was pretty brutal to get through.
It details a systemic dismantling of masculinity, starting in early childhood. Riker argues that the modern education system is essentially designed to crush natural boyish behavior.
He refers to it as grooming, but not necessarily in the sexual sense. He means it in the ideological sense. He brings up the story of a boy suspended for chewing a piece of toast into the shape of a toast gun, and he got suspended.
Yet, at the exact same school, they might host a drag queen story hour. Riker points out the massive contradiction here. A symbol of male aggression, even just a piece of toast, is met with zero tolerance. But adult sexual performance in front of children is celebrated as inclusive.
It is a double standard that only really makes sense if you accept the book's feral maternal theory. Protect the infant, destroy the predator. There was another story about a 6-year-old in Portland. He tattled on his own father. He told his teacher that his dad said boys have penises, and the teacher gave the kid a gold star for reporting it.
This is what Riker calls ideological weaning. The goal, according to his thesis, is to sever the child's loyalty to the father and transfer it entirely to the state. The father represents old biology, hierarchy, and hate. The state, represented by the teacher, is positioned as the true source of love and affirmation.
It's very Orwellian. It is straight out of 1984, turning children against their parents.
Yeah, it is. And it pathologizes totally normal boy behavior. Riker cites a 4,000% increase in youth gender dysphoria. He argues this isn't organic at all. He says it is a social contagion. Boys are basically being told that being a boy is inherently toxic, so they look for an escape hatch.
And the schools are fueling it. They are banning games like tag. They are banning dodgeball. Why? Because it reinforces toxic power dynamics. Because it has clear winners and losers.
And the feral maternal state cannot abide losers. Everyone must be safe. Everyone must be equal, even if it means we have to drag the high performers down to achieve it.
There was a dad in Texas who tried to start a fishing club for boys at his kid's school. Just fishing. Sitting by a lake with a rod. The principal shut it down, said it was too exclusive. But at the exact same time, they approved a womb yoga retreat for the girls.
Of course they did. Because female spaces are seen as empowering. Male spaces are viewed as dangerous breeding grounds for toxic masculinity. That is the exact double standard Riker is hammering home in this chapter.
And this leads us right into the belly of the beast. The satanic inversion as it actually manifests in pop culture today.
This is where the philosophy becomes incredibly visible, usually right on your phone screen.
The example that really stuck with me was this TikTok trend, maybe you've seen it, grown women dumping oatmeal on their boyfriends' heads.
Yes, the I'm not your mom trend.
They dump food on them, like messy, sticky oatmeal, and scream, "I'm not your mom." And the comments on these videos are all cheering, "You go, girl, empowerment, smash the patriarchy."
Riker analyzes this brilliantly. He says it represents the total rejection of the biological role of motherhood. These women are violently rejecting the idea of nurturing or caring for a man. But, and here's the inversion, simultaneously, by throwing a tantrum and making a huge mess, who are they actually acting like?
They're acting exactly like toddlers.
Exactly. They reject being a mother, but they demand to be treated like the baby. They want the authority of the adult, but the total lack of responsibility of the infant.
It's a complete mess. And Riker connects this widespread rejection of motherhood to something much bigger, which is demographic collapse.
The abortion apocalypse. Riker cites over 1 billion abortions globally since 1980. He frames it as a fertility rebellion.
He actually calls it the suicide of the West. His argument is that we are prioritizing career, self, and empowerment over legacy and family. We are literally deleting the future.
And when you combine that demographic reality with the constant demonization of men, you have to ask, why would men want to participate in this society? Riker argues men are simply checking out. They aren't getting married, they aren't having kids, and they aren't working as hard to prop up the system.
But Riker doesn't just leave the reader in a pit of despair. He spends a lot of time talking about the resistance. And I love this part because he says explicitly, no therapy.
Right, this is a crucial point for him. He believes the modern therapeutic model is actually part of the infection. It feminizes men by forcing them to constantly dwell on feelings, trauma, and processing rather than taking action. It turns you inward when you should be looking outward.
So what is his solution? He calls it male ecological niche restoration.
It sounds like an academic term, but it is actually very primal. It is about men physically reclaiming their spaces.
He talks about men meeting in garages, out in forests, no emotional check-ins. They are building things with their hands. They are reading Aristotle. They are lifting weights.
It is about a return to basic competence. Riker mentions the 100 Fathers Project. This is a group of men pooling their resources to buy land and raise kids together, essentially opting out of the corrupt institutions entirely. They are building their own schools and their own local communities.
That is the key, right? Opting out.
Being ungovernable, not in a lawless or violent sense, these are law-abiding men, but in an emotional sense. Riker urges men to reject the NPC mindset, the non-player character. Don't just recite the script society hands you. Reject the satanic mind virus.
There's a story at the end of the book that sums this up perfectly. It is very simple, but it hit me hard. A father takes his young son to help build a barn. The kid hammers 87 nails into the wood.
And the key detail of that story, no one praised him.
Exactly. No gold star, no good job, buddy. No ice cream for participation. He just did the work because the work needed doing. And a Riker says that is the cure. Competence, duty, grounding yourself in reality.
It is a total rejection of the modern dopamine loop of validation. It is doing the hard thing simply because it is the right thing to do. That is the essence of masculinity that Riker wants to see restored.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Riker is pretty clear about his intentions. A mental Marxist isn't just a book. He calls it a war manual and a diagnostic tool.
If you don't understand the nature of the infection, you cannot possibly fight it. Riker is providing the vocabulary. Feral maternal, satanic inversion, luxury beliefs. He is giving you the terms so you can finally see the matrix code for yourself.
If you want to keep getting these kinds of unfiltered insights, you need to follow Conrad Riker. Go to Substack right now and follow @Conrad Riker. He is putting out essays every single week that just cut right through the noise.
And honestly, getting the full text is crucial here. We have covered the high-level concepts today, but the depth of the data, the historical analysis, and the psychological theory in the book is absolutely worth reading for yourself.
Absolutely. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now. Buy the ebook, Mental Marxists.
Yeah.
And here is a strategic move Riker explicitly asks for. Leave a 5-star review.
Beat the algorithm.
Exactly. The algorithm hates this content. It actively wants to bury it. By buying it and reviewing it, you are helping other men find this lifeline. You are fighting back against the censorship.
It is a small act of resistance, but it really matters.
So hit subscribe on this deep dive if you haven't already. Go check out the book. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over based on all this.
Go for it.
If the feral maternal state succeeds in eliminating all risk, all danger, and all tough independent men, what happens when a true, unavoidable physical crisis actually hits? Who is going to be left to fix the bridges, fight the fires, or defend the borders?
That's the real question.
Think about that as you go about your week. Remember the lesson of the 87 nails. Don't wait for applause. Build something real. Live like a man.
See the truth.
We will see you on the next deep dive.